And I'd like to welcome you into our beautiful space. This is a monument that is dedicated by and for veterans. We're dedicated to the 9,000 names you see on the wall of men and women who served during the Civil War just from Cuyahoga County. If this was for the entire state, it would be about 32 stories tall. A monumental task was the Civil War, and Ohio was up to that task. I wanted to mention that there's no denotion on these walls as to who passed during the Civil War and who served and then went on to help build this city. We are a monument to service. That being said, about 1,000 of these men did perish in the war. About 1,200 of them, though, met just across the square here in a group of old soldiers and sailors, is what they called the group at the time. But it was a precursor to the GAR chapter here in Cleveland, the Grand Army of the Republic. And you'll see some of those items along this case that we're next to today. That group of 1,200 men came together and decided they were going to build this building. And they built it with the purpose of honoring those they served with. They also did not want us to forget that service. So today we're here to honor those. I personally did not serve. I thank you, those of you that did. Today I am honoring my grandfather, Robert Bain, who served in the U.S. Army, along with my father-in-law, who's here with us today, Rich Passerell, who also served in the U.S. Army. We are going to go through our listing here, but those of you that are coming up to speak or to present, a little technical note. We have a brand new microphone stand, and if you jar the stand, it makes some noise. So if you can, try and talk with your hands out here. But I will start with the posting of our colors, which we have done, and the playing of our national anthem. And sorry, I'm not as prepared as I'd like. Thank you. You may be seated. And now we would like to place wreaths for each of the service branches. I'm sorry in advance to the Space Force. We don't have a wreath yet, but we're getting there. I'd like to first invite, for representing the U.S. Army, veteran Wayne Chitwood. Representing the Marine Corps, veteran Kirk Kokel. Representing the U.S. Navy, Kip Fields. veteran. Representing the U.S. Air Force, veteran Lance Knight. Representing the U.S. Coast Guard, Virginia Gardner, on behalf of her father, veteran Francis Gardner. And now, if you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, I have the honor of introducing my daughter, Emily Palumbo. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. And now for our invocation, Jeff Fobert.
God of compassion, dignity, and strength, watch over our veterans of the United States in recognition of their loyal service to our nation. Bless them with holiness and love, shelter them, heal their wounds, comfort their hearts, and grant them peace. God of justice and truth, bless our veterans. These men and women of courage and valor, with a deep and abiding understanding of our profound gratitude. Protect them and their families from loneliness and want. Grant them lives of joy and bounty. May their decision and dedication and honor to be remembered as a blessing from generation to generation. Amen.
Thank you, Jeff. And now we'll get to why everybody is really here. You may be seated. Major General Deborah Ashenhurst of the U.S. Army, retired, was appointed Director of the Ohio Department of Veterans Services on January 14, 2019. Ashenhurst retired from the U.S. Army and National Guard in October 2015 after more than 37 years of service. At that time, she served at all levels of command. In 2011, she was appointed by Ohio Governor John Kasich to the cabinet-level position of Adjutant General of the state of Ohio, commanding the 17,000 service members of the Ohio National Guard, the Ohio Naval Militia, and the Ohio Military Reserve. She served as Adjutant General until January of 2015. Her career culminated by serving as a Special Assistant to the Vice Chief National Guard Bureau in Washington, D.C. General Ashenhurst resides with her husband, Colonel Jim Ashenhurst, U.S. Army retired, in Hilliard, Ohio. I'd like you all to welcome Major General Ashenhurst.
Thank you all. I am very privileged to be here, very honored to be here today. I have to say this is one of the most unique stanzas I've had to give remarks for, but I love this. I very much appreciate that you all are here and spent your time today in this honored and hallowed place. This is terrific. I say Happy Veterans Day, but I struggle with that sometimes. Is it a happy day? And I know that for many you're just trying to celebrate and honor our veterans, but I know for some veterans maybe it isn't a happy day. I think they don't always mind the recognition, but I think it also is a time that sometimes they take to reflect, and that they realize that sometimes their counterparts from war didn't come home. Some that came home are not with us anymore either. And so it's kind of one of those bittersweet days where I try to judge which way I should go with how we're going to celebrate this day. But I'm just all glad that you are here, and let's commemorate, and let's honor, and let's be thoughtful about it. I guess that's the most we can ask for. So Veterans Day, why is it even important to host an event like this? Except that you have this great place to do it in, so why wouldn't you? But you know, it is important to host events and to talk about it and to remember. It's an opportunity to recognize veterans for the service they did, and I would say also those that are currently serving, because about anybody that's in uniform today, unless they just joined last week, are also veterans normally of a foreign war. So it's important to recognize them, to thank them probably, okay. To celebrate them is what I'd rather say. Let us celebrate that you were willing to put your life on the line, to raise your right hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And what that really means is they're willing to go fight for those rights that we hold so dear here in the United States. And honestly, we, for the most part, take for granted. And we should always take this opportunity to also remember those that gave their lives for those rights. And it's interesting to work with school children, which I do a lot around Veterans Day and Memorial Day, that they don't understand how great of a country is they live in. Anyone who's been overseas in the U.S. military wants to come home and kiss the ground, because they realize, that's when you realize how great this land is. I'll tell you, from Central America, South America, and of course Europe, and across Southwest Asia, and all the places we've been, every time I come back to the United States, I just want to kiss the ground, because I recognize what we hold here is so dear that other people will practically die trying to get here to live. And if we put that in perspective, it helps us to understand why there are lines outside our borders for people to want to come in, and that we shouldn't take that for granted. Thank you. So I've been thinking lately about patriotism, and I know that means something to a little something different to everybody. But I'm wondering if we still have it. Is it waning? Are we maintaining it? So it took me back to 9/11. That was a culminating point in the history of our people as a people of a country. That how dare some terrorist organization attack us on our homeland? No. From here forward, we are fighting our wars in somebody else's country. We don't want that war to come to our state. And that was such a culminating event where Americans came together as a country in a support cell of, there were flags everywhere. People were putting flagpoles on their houses that had never done so before. There were flags on bumper stickers. They were everywhere. And that patriotism is strong. Our country, we're in this together. We're not going to allow terrorism in our home, on our home ground. But you realize that they're teaching the events of 9/11 as history now in the schools, and that the young people that we need to join the military today weren't even alive at 9/11. That was humbling for me to take that look back and realize they don't know what we're talking about, because after 9/11, lots of people joined the military. Everybody was willing to step up and say, not on my home ground. But we've got to figure it out. So who's responsible for patriotism, for ensuring that love and that zest for what the United States gives us? Well, I'd say our veterans for sure, and I try to talk to our veterans about that. I'm not sure it's going so well in the schools, and I'll share just one short anecdote. Last year I spoke at what was my high school is now a middle school. And I'm down in the front row, ready, my thoughts going about my speeches, but the little choir is up on the stage singing the Star-Spangled Banner. And when they started singing, there was only one child in the choir with her hand over her heart. And she did this and put her hand back down to her side. I'm like, no, you were doing it right. You were doing it right. Show the others. Don't give it up. So my speech that day got a little animated. And perhaps I was a little forceful in teaching those children that when I made him stand up. I said, put your right hand, put it over your heart. That's how you stand every time you hear the national anthem. That's how you pay respects to our nation. Now go home and teach your parents, because obviously they don't know. I mean, we have to do that. And veterans can do that in a pretty strong way that maybe some others can't. But it's on all of us to make sure our children understand that this nation is great. And their part in keeping it great is to respect it. And part of that respect is the customs, the courtesies that we pay, those symbols of our freedom. Because we're old enough to understand that this does symbolize our freedom. For them, it's just our flag. So it's our job to teach that. And whether it's going into the schools and speaking, or just raising your children, your grandchildren, my poor granddaughters are made examples of all the time. We had sit on the same corner, our family corner, for the 4th of July parade in my little town of Hilliard. And they know it's coming. Hey girls, here comes the flag. Stand up, put your hand over your heart. And I do it really loud so everybody around us can hear me. And hopefully they will do the same. Now, your grandchildren might not tolerate it as well as mine do, but those are the sort of things we're going to have to do, is to teach people, because evidently we aren't doing a good job of it in all of our homes or even in some of our schools. So I ask you to do that. And let me tell you another reason that's important, is that our young people today, now I'm talking now a little bit older young people, in that targeted range to join our military, so those late teenagers, early 20s, many of them are saying they're afraid to join. They're afraid to join our military. Why? Because they're afraid they're going to come back broken. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally broken. And they're afraid they won't be able to fit back into society and join their friends. Now, I say we talk about that now, and it's important. But I'm thinking young people probably thought that every time they were joining the military or going off to war. And we have to help them realize that most of us that joined the military, it just provided a great foundation, a great understanding of values and teamwork, and it gave us a great start in life. So that next job, we understood how to operate as part of a team. We understood how to get to work on time and do what we were told to do and meet the expectations of us. So if we can help spread that word, and that if by chance you go in the military and you're one of those few that do come back broken, your country will not leave you. We will take care of you. We love our veterans. We embrace our veterans, and we want to make sure that they are whole and are able to function in society. And if they can't be brought back to whole, that we will take care of them for the rest of their lives. That's what we do in the United States. And what's really kind of bad is there's less than a third, it's down in the 20s now, of those young people in that targeted range for recruitment in Ohio that are actually eligible to join our military. It's not a default position anymore. You don't just, I can't figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up, I'll just go in the military. The requirements are pretty tough, and we're a pretty high-tech organization, this Department of Defense we have now. And if there are blips in your background, if you're not totally well, it's hard to get in the military. It's a competitive business these days. So those that are eligible, we need to make sure that they realize that it's a good start in life. And you become part of a fraternity or a sorority where we will always look out for each other. We will always know you as part of our team, and we will always count on you. So let me end today. I found this quote that I had never found before, and it really struck to me why we need to do the things we do today. And it's George W. Bush giving a speech on Veterans Day at the National Cemetery in D.C. And he said, "We observe Veterans Day on an anniversary, not of a great battle or the beginning of a war, but a day when a war ended and our nation was again at peace. Ever since the armistice of November the 11th, 1918, this has been a day to remember our debt to all who have worn the uniform of the United States. Our veterans have borne the costs of America's wars and have stood watch over America's peace. And today, every day, every veteran can be certain the nation you served and the people you defended are grateful." Thank you.
Thank you, General Ashenhurst. And thank you to our Department of Veteran Services in Ohio. There are a lot of services that they offer. Cuyahoga County Veteran Services Commission is here today as well. Shout out to you guys. Get connected. That is one of the best things as a veteran you can do for yourself. You've earned it. Take advantage of those services. So please get registered with the Veteran Services Department and Commission. It is my pleasure to introduce Ted Prossi, our president here at the monument, and also U.S. Navy veteran.
Thank you, and thank you to General Ashenhurst. I'm glad she was able to control her animation today. We do have a little something to thank you.
Not necessary. Oh, I'm very happy though. Thank you so
This
much.
is a book about us, and of course our architect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. General Ashenhurst hit on the same themes as this building, which you're sitting in. Remember, this was dedicated to those who served the Union cause in the Civil War from this county. So it's a space that's really dedicated to a finite time. Yet here we are doing a veterans ceremony 160 years later. And it doesn't honor just the men whose names are on this wall, but all of those who have served before and after. And so when we talk about what are we recognizing, we're recognizing that service, but it's the sacrifice implicit in that. As you heard from Greg, many of the men whose names are on their wall died in service. But every one of them offered their lives so that this nation might live. And we remember the men who raised their right hand and took that oath. In fact, many of you are looking at one right here. This statuary represents a man who not only is no longer enslaved, but is now joining the fight for freedom, who's raised his right hand to take that oath of office, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so that's what this building captures. But remember that these verities hold true. We're now roughly 80 years from World War II. We've grown up listening to the Greatest Generation and those stories. And yet when they were growing up, remember the World War II is approximately 80 years after this war, the Civil War, which was approximately 80 years after America's Revolution. And these truths have held true. The need to honor and to celebrate and remember that service, that willingness to engage in something larger than who we are as individuals. And what can we do? It's important to remember them, but it's also important to remember them as individuals. So when we call out somebody because of that service, it causes them to be remembered. We add to that legacy of time. And if you think about it, what is it that we all strive for? We're here. We were here. We made a difference. And somebody's going to remember that. So we can tell those stories. We can tell stories about the individuals who are in some ways larger than life. America had 5 Civil War veterans who became president. They were all native sons of Ohio. We can tell those stories about a man named James Garfield who was born just miles from here in the last log cabin presidency. We can tell stories about individuals whose names are on our wall. I can call out my great-grandfather who served the Union cause in the 107th Ohio Volunteer Infantry, who lost his brother at the Battle of Chancellorsville. So I can remember Frederick Prossi. But I can also call out my brother, who just died this past year, who served in the Cold War as a command pilot for SAC. Each of them willing to step forward and do what needed to be done. We can remember people like the Butler brothers who served in America's Revolution one becoming Major General Richard Butler, who died on Ohio's frontier in the 1790s, again, serving the U.S. Army in its largest defeat. And to this day, each generation remembers him by naming someone Richard in that family. And so as we look back, we can tell those stories because those stories then resonate, and they resonate to the next generation and the next. And it is our purpose here. One of the things we do is we not only show you these, but we want to make sure that these names are remembered with reverent honors in that book of national remembrance, so that, yes, we talk about it on Memorial Day and Veterans Day, but we should try and find a way to do it every day, to pass that information down, to tell those stories, and to honor those people in those small ceremonies of remembrance. So I thank you all for coming and listening to me. I especially appreciate Major General Ashenhurst, who I must tell you, I told her the story of my big brother, who was a 37-year Marine, who just passed away this last year as well, who was Deputy Commandant of the Marine Corps. And so you remember people who served, but what we don't remember is all of those who might have served to that same extent, who passed away in service to the nation. So we remember those as well today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Richard Ted Prosson, by the way. We will close today with the playing of taps. If it will play. My apologies. It seems to have gone to sleep. We're having technical issues. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to General Ashenhurst, my daughter Emily, Ted, and all of you for joining us. And thank you all for your service. We appreciate it. That'll be it. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.